The world shook when the silence ended. Not a roar, but a whisper started it. A lion on the Serengeti plains raised its head and spoke, not in growls or rumbling echoes, but in words. Clear, planned, and impossible to deny. The rangers who saw it froze, thinking it was crazy. But when the lion looked them in the eye and stated, "This land is not only yours," Reality 87 was born when "It Is Ours Too" came out. The news spread quickly. Wolves howled ideas into the night and the wind carried their utterances. Within weeks, whales sang old songs across oceans, describing tales that went back to before the first flame of humanity. In just a few months, every dog and cat in the house looked at their owners with eyes that spoke more than love. They said thought. It was a revelation for people. Justice had been a long time coming for animals. The first worldwide debate started in New York. The United Nations Assembly had a shepherd dog named Elias. People were taking pictures and talking. But when he walked up to the podium, everyone stopped. Elias sat quietly and talked to the leaders of the globe in a low, steady voice. "We have served you, fought with you, and died for you. Some of us have gone hungry in alleys. Some people have been locked up in cages. Now we want to know if you can hear us, or will you be afraid of us?" The room was full of pandemonium. Some people clapped with tears in their eyes. Others murmured about how dangerous it was, their faces pale with disbelief. The moral storm had begun. Centuries of human confidence fell apart in a single night. People have lived by a cruel logic for thousands of years. Animals were resources, friends, and amusement. But today, every stake had a voice. Every leather jacket had an accusation, and every zoo was a prison full of people who could plead to be let go. The restaurants closed. Kids turned down meals that used to have buddies in them. Pet owners were scared since they didn't know if their pets loved them or hated them. Some people found solace in the new honesty, as dogs preached loyalty and cats whispered lessons of patience. Others fell deeper into remorse because they couldn't face the animals they had dubbed lesser. Governments were in a hurry to find answers. Should animals be allowed to be citizens? Should lions have the land they walked on? Should whales be able to vote? Mara sat on her veranda in the outskirts of London with her golden retriever Jonah. For years he had been her silent friend, listening to all of her secrets without judging her. That night, as birds argued over who owned the land, she muttered nervously, "Do you think about me the same way I think about you?" Jonah tilted his head. His eyes became softer, and then he said something for the first time. "I see you as family, but I worry if you will see me as equal." Mara's heart broke and then grew again. She heard the question that would define Reality 87 in his words. Not all voices wanted peace. Lions and elephants in the savannas established councils to warn that their patience was running out. Whales in the waters requested an end to harpoons, saying that the deep would punish any ship that carried them. In secret woods, ravens and wolves warned of revolution in both poetic and scary ways. The planet changed its balance. People had made themselves the only ones who could write their own fate. But with every bark, roar, and song, it became evident that they had never been alone in their minds. When the hush ended, it never came back. Reality 87 had reached the point where every voice counted, and some people were tired of not being heard. The United Nations chamber had never been so full or so split up. There were delegates from all around the world in the chairs, but this time they weren't the only ones who spoke. Kale, a raven, sat quietly in the middle. His black eyes reflected ages of watching in silence, and the artificial lights made his feathers shine. Everyone in the hall leaned forward when he spoke. "We've seen your wars, your laws, and your speeches that go on and on. You said you were wise, but we were quiet. But now the quiet is over. Please, humans, will you let us sit at the table? Or will you try to keep our mouths shut like you did our bodies?" There was a maelstrom of voices in the chamber. Some people cheered, while others yelled their protests. A minister from the northern states slapped his hand down on the desk. "They're animals," he yelled. "If we respect their rights, every farm will fail and every economy will fail. Will cows ask for money? Will wolves want to vote? Society itself will fall apart." From the other side, an ambassador slowly got up. "Maybe civilization won't fall apart," she said. "Maybe it will change over time. If these entities can talk, think, and feel pain, then denying them rights means admitting that we have been tyrants all along." The air became thick. Cameras sent every word around the world. Millions of people watched, holding their breath, to see if people would protect their kingdom or share it. There were protests outside the parliament. In Trafalgar Square in London, people chanted, "Freedom! Freedom!" with parrots on banners. In São Paulo, cattle marched down empty highways, led by people who wanted the slaughterhouses to stop. In Tokyo, dolphins jumped in the bay while interpreters sent their voices out. No more nets, no more blood. But resistance grew just as strong. Ranchers in Kansas carried guns and promised never to kneel before animals they had ever branded. Generals in Moscow said that wolves might collaborate as well as negotiate. Every hour that went by, the boundary between living together and going to war was less clear. From the peace and quiet of her home, Mara watched the chaos unfold on her screen. Her golden puppy Jonah sat next to her as calm as usual. "They will never agree," she replied in a hushed voice. "People won't give up their power. Animals won't accept anything less than freedom." Jonah looked at her. "Then the question isn't if they agree. Will the world last long enough for them to learn?" More than any protest, his words made her feel cold. The Raven call spoke again in the UN. "We don't want to rule you. We beg for what has always been ours: life, freedom, and respect. You educated your kids about fairness. Now show us that it wasn't a lie." There was silence for a minute, and then a voice shattered it. It wasn't a human voice. It was a low, deep growl. A lion named Ashera sprang up from the edge of the chamber. African delegates had brought him as an observer. His mane shone in the sunshine, and his golden eyes were fixed on the crowd. Ashera said, "Negotiation ends tonight. We will take what is ours if you won't share the world. We own the savannas. The whales own the oceans. The birds own the sky. Don't confuse patience with weakness." People gasped throughout the hall. The delegates lost color. The world had just heard its first declaration of independence from a country that wasn't human. That night, every network's headlines asked the same thing: is this the beginning of a new civilization? Some people termed it hope. Some people termed it war. As people and animals marched together or against each other in the streets, one thing became clear: the world could never go back to being quiet. It was something the world had never seen before. There was a long table in the World Forum in Geneva, under the arched glass dome. The human delegates sat on one side. They were politicians in tailored suits with pale features that showed they were unsure. On the other side, for the first time ever, the chosen representatives of the animal world sat. The raven call sat on a carved wooden stand, and its feathers shone like obsidian. Ashera, the lion whose voice had echoed through the United Nations chamber, lay next to him. His mane sparkled like fire in the sunshine, and every time he moved his golden eyes, everyone went quiet. At the far end of the table, a humpback whale named Soria appeared through a giant holographic projection. Her speech conveyed into the chamber as a deep, musical rumble. It seemed like the air was holding its breath. A person who was shaking hit the gavel. "This assembly," she said, "is the first council of equals. Its goal is to figure out how two civilizations, humans and animals, can live together on the same planet." Soria was the first to speak. Her voice sounded like the waves. "For centuries, we sang in oceans stained with your blood. Harpoons went through our families, yet we kept going. We don't want pity. We want the killing to stop. The seas must be free." The Norwegian delegate moved around awkwardly. He said, "Our economies will fall apart without fishing. Millions will die of hunger." Carl quickly tilted his head. "Maybe you should ask the fish what they think of your economies." The animals laughed, but the humans became red. Then Ashera got up. His huge body gave the room a sense of primitive might. "We don't want to kill you off, but we won't take chains. Lions will not be prizes. Elephants will not be ivory. Your civilization deserves to fall if you need us to die to survive." The hush that followed was smothering. The world was split outside the room. In Paris, thousands of people marched with peace banners. People walked with dogs that screamed, "One planet, many voices," through translation equipment. Farmers in Johannesburg, on the other hand, set fire to their fields in protest, promising not to give up land to beasts. The argument went on for hours inside. Ethics and survival were at odds, and law and tradition were at odds. Then, something that wasn't expected happened. Mara, a human observer sitting quietly in the back, asked for the floor. She wasn't a politician or a leader. She was just a school teacher whose relationship with her dog Jonah became a meme on social media. The moderator let her speak, but only because she asked. She walked forward and her voice was shaky, yet clear. "Maybe this isn't about splitting the world. It could be about putting it all together. For hundreds of years, people thought they were meant to be in charge. But maybe animals that talk now were designed to remind us of what we lost: humility." She looked at Jonah, who was sitting next to her. He looked her in the eye and then spoke with calm dignity. "We don't want to rule you. We want to walk next to you. Let's govern together if we are equals." The room went quiet again, and for the first time, the idea of real partnership floated in the air. The Geneva Declaration was signed that night. It didn't fix every problem, but it did make the first rule. People and animals would share councils for land, sea, and sky. History was inscribed in ink and claw, but even if the world seemed happy, there were still shadows. Not every animal trusted people. Not everyone agreed with equality. Wolves in the woods of Siberia whispered about revenge. In corporate skyscrapers, leaders made plans to stop the animal sounds before their businesses went down. And Soria's melodies conveyed warnings all the way to the bottom of the ocean. All partnerships are weak. Betrayal waits even in unity. The Council of Equals had come into being, but no one could say for sure if it was the start of peace or the start of war. It was just a month after the Geneva Declaration was signed that it fell apart. At first, it looked like the Council of Equals was doing its job. Every week, people and animals met, and their voices were heard around the world. On TV, dogs and philosophers argued about ethics. Ravens made caustic comments in parliaments. Whales sang into microphones that turned their stories into ideas for new laws. Hope shone for a brief period, but there was anger behind the speeches. In the Midwest of the United States, slaughterhouses were empty and millions of people lost their jobs. Farmers in the African savannas watched as herds of animals took back territory they had once used for grazing. In the boardrooms of major companies, the unspoken question echoed. How long will it be before the council destroys everything we built? One stormy night, the answer came. There were a lot of people in the chamber for the voting on the Shared Sovereignty Act, which would give animals legal ownership of their native environments. The lion Ashera stood in the middle, his mane shining in the lights. The microphones picked up his rich voice. We don't say that the earth is ours alone, but we won't be guests on territory that has always belonged to us. Let us protect it and share it with you. Call the raven turned his head. If justice means anything, it means that land can't be stolen forever. Give back what was taken. The hall shook with both cheers and boos. Some people nodded while others hissed. A delegate from the northern states stood up, his face red with anger. If you give them this, our cities will go hungry. Our frontiers will fall apart. Do you want wolves at your door asking for citizenship? The lights flickered before the gavel could bring order back. Glass breaking made a loud noise in the chamber. A blast ripped the place apart. There was a lot of smoke in the air. Delegates yelled and ran for safety. In the middle of the turmoil, people in black masks stormed the floor with guns that weren't intended at people, but at animals. Gunfire sounded loudly. Kal the Raven extended his wings and screamed as he flew up toward the rafters. Ashera yelled and jumped in front of the astonished delegates to protect them from the invaders. Bullets bounced off the hidden walls, sending sparks flying, but one hit its target. The lion staggered and blood ran down his mane. Traitors, he yelled. His yell shook the room in both sound and meaning. The attackers ran away as quickly as they had come, disappearing into the smoke. The council floor was a mess when the lights stopped flickering. Delegates were hurt, walls were burned, and the Council of Equals was in disarray. Within minutes, everyone knew. Screens all throughout the world showed pictures of a hurt lion that was having trouble standing up because of betrayal. The headline screamed, "Council under attack, who wants peace dead?" Protests started right away. People and dogs marched in anger in New York calling for justice. In Cape Town, groups of farmers welcomed the attack and said it was the start of a struggle for survival. Wolves surrounded communities in Moscow, growling as if they were going to get revenge. Soria's voice at sea was a warning darker than any other. If this war starts, it won't be fought in silence. The oceans will rise on their own. Mara knelt next to Ashera in the remains of the Geneva chamber. His breathing was heavy, yet his golden eyes were still full of fire. They want to kill the dream before it has a chance to grow, she said quietly. The lion's voice was feeble, but strong. The dream must then roar louder than their bullets. The world dies with the council if it dies here. Kal landed on the broken podium, his feathers covered in soot. His black eyes were on the human delegates. Choose what you want. You can either stand with us or against us, but you should know that you can't be neutral anymore. The council was no longer together, but its shadow could be seen in every city, on every farm, and on every beach. The first blood had been shed, and in reality 87 blood never flowed without a reason. The blast in Geneva didn't simply hurt a lion. It had hurt the weak trust that kept Reality 87 together. The council's dream broke apart across continents in just a few hours. Leaders in Washington condemned the attack, but were hesitant to point fingers at any one group. Protesters in Johannesburg wanted revenge for Ashera, while people from the other side carried signs that said, "Earth for humans, only." Officials in Beijing called the council experiment destabilizing and secretly sent animal representatives back to their home countries. The weak partnership was on the verge of falling apart. The Raven calls. Picture burned like fire on TV screens all across the world. His harsh voice rang out across networks. The council will not back down. You assume that spilling blood makes us weaker, but you have simply stirred up the storm. War will answer if you want it. His statements were both a warning and a prediction. Whales erected a blockade in the waters, blocking shipping routes with fleets of living giants. The sailors of the cargo ships were terrified when the deep seas pulsed with melodious warnings. Trade around the world fell. Wolves started patrolling woodlands in Europe at night, their shining eyes warning that anyone who tried to get in would be stopped. Farmers armed themselves and promised that creatures would not drive them from their land, but not everything was violent. In Rio de Janeiro, people and parrots gathered side by side in huge protests, chanting, "One planet, one people." In Toronto, attorneys and owls jammed the hallways to talk about ethics and write new rules that would shape the future of equality. Street cats in Tokyo formed cooperatives and offered to hunt vermin in exchange for a place to live and shared leadership. Hope flickered. But terror burned more brightly. Mara saw the pandemonium happen from her house. The news kept coming. One channel showed Ashera getting better with medical care, but his roars were muffled by agony. Another showed people in charge fighting about whether animals should be protected or punished. She turned off the screen, shaking. Jonah, her golden retriever, slept next to her, his eyes full of thought. He said softly, "You see the truth." The council did not cause dissension. It showed what was already there. Some people think we are the same as them. Some people think we're dangerous. And some animals feel the same way about you. Mara shook her head. It's crazy. Why can't they see that we're stronger when we're together? Jonah turned his head. Because being together means giving up something. And no one, whether they are human or animal, wants to give up their throne. The city outside her window went crazy that night. Protesters fought in the streets, throwing bottles and yelling slogans. Some people marched with pets and chanted for peace. Some people threw insults at people who walked with animals while carrying bats and stones. As the sirens blasted, Mara clutched onto Jonah's collar. "How long will it take to get to our door?" she murmured. Jonah's speech sounded calm, but his eyes got darker. "Not long. People are picking sides in the world. And soon, you will have to too." Religious leaders around the world stepped into the flames. An imam in Cairo said that animals have always been part of God's creation and should be treated with the same respect as people. In Rome, priests split up. The Pope didn't say anything, and cardinals clashed over scripture that said animals didn't have souls. In Delhi, holy cows marched into temples with people who were on their side, asking for places to stay that were safe from being killed. Faith was broken. Fights of words turned into fights of fists. The last spark came in the African savannas. A group of angry farmers who had lost land attacked an elephant council that was traveling with people to safeguard them. Gunshots rang out across the plains. 3 elephants were dead after the smoke cleared. The world stopped in fear. Sorya's words echoed through the depths of the water that night. "You keep spilling blood. You try patience that has been around longer than your empires. We won't sing if you want war. We'll strike." The earth trembled as a new age began. Some people thought that the Council of Equals would bring about peace. Some thought it was the start of the end of life. But everyone agreed on one thing. There would never be stillness again. The world held its breath. Every frail thread of peace fell apart in the weeks after the elephants were killed. Whales blocked off whole oceans. Wolves thought of forests as their own countries. Hunters were not allowed to enter the plains by lions. States of emergency were declared by governments. When meat disappeared from stores, zoos emptied, and farms became battlefields, economies fell apart. The Council of Equals met again in Geneva, but the room was no longer full of hope. There were guards on the walls. People outside yelled. Cameras sent out live feeds every second to a world that wanted either resolution or collapse. Ashera stood upon the podium again, his mane scarred from the attempt on his life. His golden eyes looked over all the delegates, both human and animal. "We gave you our voices," he yelled, "and you shot back with bullets. But we are still here. This is your last chance, people. Choose peace, or get ready for silence, not ours, but yours." The roar of the lion echoed through the hall, not only as sound, but as a warning that everyone there felt in their bones. The raven call followed. His feathers shone in the light as he spoke with sharp clarity. The council was not a gift. It was a reflection. We showed you who you are. Some of you see friends. Some people see adversaries. But you should know that the time of rule is over. Share the earth or lose it, whispers spread. Some of the human delegates bowed their heads in shame. Some people clenched their fists in anger. Then Sorya's voice echoed across the room, and her projection looked like a ghost from the deep. The oceans are watching. We remember your ships, your harpoons, and your avarice. The sea is patient, but not forever. Listen to us. If you start a war, the tide will not turn in your favor. The room shook because of what she said, and then Mara moved forward. She didn't have an official seat or any power, but the council let her speak because she had become a symbol to millions. Jonah walked next to her, calm but determined. She spoke gently, yet every microphone picked up her shaking voice. We are at the verge of history. Animals don't whisper in the dark anymore. People no longer rule by themselves. Fear of change and fear of loss, on the other hand, blind us. We will only get ashes if we choose violence. She put her hand on Jonah's head. He looked up at the room, and his voice was solid and clear. We don't want to be worshipped. We don't want to enslave. We want to live free of chains, killing, and deception. If you think you're smart, show it. Show the world that intelligence is more important than power. The hush that came after was worse than any noise. The protests reached their peak outside. People and animals marched together in some cities, calling for unity. In several cases, fights turned deadly. In one block, police wrestled with dogs, and in another, they shot at wolves. The world was making a choice, and no one knew which one would last. The last vote started in Geneva. One by one, hands and paws went up. Some countries flat out turned down the council. Some people fully accepted it. The tally flickered across the screens, uneven and weak, and suddenly it stopped. The vote didn't end in victory. It ended in a tie, with half the world choosing coexistence and half choosing conflict. The room went crazy. Some delegates yelled victory, while others yelled betrayal. Ashera yelled. Kal screamed. Sorya's voice sounded like a storm. Jonah whispered to Mara through it all. Votes don't decide what is real. What we select when fear knocks is what matters. The telecast went all around the world. In Geneva, billions of people watched as people and animals looked each other down, with the future hanging in the balance. And then the feed stopped. No one knew what would happen next. Maybe peace, maybe war, maybe something more than both. But in reality 87, one reality would always be true. The world could never unhear the animals when they talked. Welcome to Beyond the Fractals. Subscribe now and explore every reality.